What's up, everyone? Kriddle here, and I've been playing a lot of Lorcana lately. I've been opening packs with my son on stream, and we're having a lot of fun playing this game. And when we're doing that, we're getting a lot of questions from viewers that are asking how this game is played, you know, the different things about them, what the cards do, stuff like that. So I was going to make a series of videos. It's going to go over the basics, and then we're going to get into some of the more complex things as we go through the series. But in this first video, I just want to talk about the basics of the cards so you can kind of get an idea of how the game is played. This isn't going to be a how to play the game video, but more of what each card can do and kind of the flow of the game. And then in the next video, we might talk about how to actually play and like do a couple turns of a game. So let's jump right into it. With any card game, you need to know the card, right? So we're going to talk about each of the different types of cards there are. The cards come in 6 different colors, and each of those colors has kind of a theme to it. It doesn't necessarily lock them into that theme, but it does kind of set the tone of what your deck would be able to do. So if you go with the red color here, which is the ruby, these are going to be more of your aggressive play style. They're going to have things like rush. You're going to be able to attack other characters a lot. So they're probably going to end up having a higher attack value a lot of times and just be able to kind of put a lot of pressure on your opponent's characters. Next up, we have the sapphire cards. These are your items and intellect cards and strategy type cards. They're going to be more of your build up, get everything set up the way you want it, and then do a bunch of things that is going to be able to defeat your opponent. Next up, we have steel cards. Steel cards are your kind of best attackers, best character cards, right? So the ruby cards are more of your attackers and more of your like rush type things, but the steel cards are going to have your high value attacks, your high value defenses, and usually they're going to have things like bodyguard or evasive. They're going to be those kind of characters that are going to be able to prevent damage, but be able to deal damage back to your opponent. Next up, we have amethyst. These are like spell cards mostly, so they're going to have a lot of cards that are going to allow you to do abilities. So the characters on themselves may not be as strong, and they'll be able to like cast a spell or to use abilities or sing a song twice, things like that, which we'll go over how songs work. Next up, we have emerald. Emerald are going to cause confusion in your opponents. So these are going to cause like you to discard, cause your opponent to discard a card, or maybe to remove some of their cards from the board much easier, or just move things around, and it's going to cause some confusion, keeping your opponent on their toes. And then lastly, we have the amber card. These are more of your support type, healers, bodyguards, stuff like that. So they're going to usually benefit the rest of your cards in some way. They're going to somehow buff them up or heal them up if they get damaged. So that's the different types of cards, the 6 different types of cards that are in the game. Next up, we're going to go over the types of cards. So those are the colors, right? Now we're going to go over the types of cards that you can get, and there's technically 5 different types of cards. First up, we have the character. And this one is Cinderella. So your characters are going to be the bread and butter. You need these to fight. You need these to quest to actually win the game. Without character cards, you're probably going to lose. You're not going to be able to really do much without these. And there's so many different types of characters that are in this. Most of them are from Disney original movies, but some of them are from other things as well. So you can get some great art on these, and I absolutely love most of these character cards. They look fantastic. Next up, we have item cards, which I kind of spoke about earlier when we were talking about the sapphire color. Item cards can be in any of the different colors. However, they're more popular in the sapphire because of the way they work. Items, much like characters, once you put them in play, they stay in play for the entirety of the game unless something happens to remove them. And then you can just tap them and use them. So every turn you'll be able to actually use them by exerting them like this, and you can use their ability. Like in this case, this one says you pay 1 less ink, which we'll go over in a minute, to play your next card this turn. So those are how items work. Next up, we have location cards. So location cards are always exerted this way. These are usually cards that just help you get free lore, which is going to be how you win the game. We'll go over lore later on. And then you can also move characters to locations. And when you move them to the location, a lot of location cards will give you a bonus ability. It could make your character evasive. It could make your character take a little bit less damage. It could allow you to draw a card at the start of your turn, things like that. So these are kind of supplemental type cards. You have to have characters to really make the most out of location cards for the most part, but they're just another type of card that you can have in play, and once you play them, they stay in play unless somebody does something to remove it. Lastly, we have the action cards, and that comes in two different types of actions. You have a regular action card, and then you have an action song card, which is this one right here. So action cards are your general, you play them, and you discard them immediately type of cards. You just have to pay the ink cost on it, which we'll go over, like I said, in a second. And then they do their ability, and then they're gone, and that is it. Song cards are very similar to that, where you can play them as an action by paying the ink cost. However, if it says song on here as well, you can actually have your characters sing it. So let's say I have my Cinderella out here. She can't actually sing this song, and I'll explain why in a minute. But my Cinderella could then, sing a song by just exerting her like so, and then she could sing the song based on some different factors. It's actually based on the ink amount, but we'll go over that here in just a minute. So that pretty much goes over the different types of cards that are in the game. You have, the 6 different color types, and then you have the 5 card types, which I guess technically are 4, but then you have the 2 action types, so action song, and then action. Next up, we're going to talk about the ink. So I've referenced ink a lot. That is going to be this right up here. This is your ink value. So this card actually costs 2 ink to play. And this one, because you can see this gold ring around it, that means you can actually ink this card. It becomes an inkable card. Some cards, like this one right here, are not inkable, and you can see that they do not have that gold ring around it, but it does have a 3 in the middle, meaning that it costs 3 ink to play. So how this works is, and one of the best parts about this game is that when you are every turn, you take one of the cards in your hand, and you can ink it every turn. And there are some ways that you can ink additional cards, or even potentially uninkable cards, if you have the right characters or items or things like that allow you to do those. But for the most part, this is how you're going to be gaining power in the game, is through this ink. You can play one of these per turn as inkable cards, and when you do, you just play it face down like this. That's it. So the first turn, you're going to have 1 inkable card. You probably will not have any more than that, because to be able to get more cards, you have to wait till your next few turns. But then you'll be able to pay immediately. You could use this to use the ink on that card and pay for a 1 cost like this right here, this land. So let's say on my very first turn, I could go, I'm not going to use Cinderella. We're going to actually ink Cinderella. So you show everybody, and then I want to play this Neverland land card. And now that is in play on my very first turn, and I would exert that like so. So that is how the ink works in the game. So each turn you want to ink your 1 card if you can, and you want to try to get up to 9 or 10 ink usually by the end of the game, because that's going to be where your big cards come into play, since each card does have an ink cost, and some of those ink costs can get up pretty high. I think the highest one that we have here is this 7 cost card right here, so you can see that they do get up fairly high. I wouldn't be able to play this until my 7th turn, assuming that I put 1 ink down every turn, unless I played a different card that allowed me to gain more ink in a turn, which there are cards that allow you to do that. The same thing with songs. I did want to talk about that. So we had our song card that we talked about earlier. If I can find it again. Where'd it go? Oh, it's right here. These also cost ink, but like I said, you can have characters sing them. So as long as your character is the same ink cost or higher, so you can see that this character is a 3 ink cost. So let's say that I played this on my 3rd turn. I had 3 ink down here, and I played this on my 3rd turn. And then on my next turn comes around, this character is ready to be played, or ready to be used to quest or attack or sing. I could then say, okay, I want my character to sing this song, and then I don't use my ink cards down here to play this. So I could play an additional card by having my character sing it. And that's another really cool aspect about this game, is that you don't have to pay the ink every single time you play a card. Some of those songs are really, really powerful. And if you have something like an Ursula character, she sings the card twice. So if you actually have her sing it, you get to play that card 2 times. Whereas if you paid for it with ink, it only gets to play once. So that goes over ink and how that works. Hopefully that made some sense. Next up, we're going to go over combat. So we're going to grab 2 characters here. We'll grab Flynn Rider and Cinderella. Let's say that we are opposing teams here, right? So Flynn Rider is my opponent and I am Cinderella. And Flynn Rider, on his last turn, he quested. So he is tapped over like this, or exerted. That means that I can attack this character with my Cinderella on my turn. So what do you do when you attack something? Well, you look at these abilities right here. So you have the strength ability, and then you have the willpower ability. Your strength is how much damage you do to the other character, and your willpower is how much damage you can receive from a character before this character is defeated. So in this case, let's say Flynn Rider is exerted and I want to attack with Cinderella. Cinderella would do 2 damage to Flynn Rider. As you can see right here, Flynn Rider has 2 willpower, which would mean that Flynn Rider is defeated. However, he does also have 1 strength. So he does his damage back to Cinderella, taking her 2 willpower down to 1. You would put a damage token on her saying she has 1 damage away. Because Flynn Rider did do that 1 damage to her. So that's how the combat works in the game. So when you do attack something, both characters are able to attack and defend at the same time. Games like Pokemon, for example, you just do damage to your opponent and they don't do damage back to you unless they have specific special abilities. But in this game, you do the damage at the same time to each other. Now we're going to talk about the way to actually win the game, which is lore. So lore is going to be the main way that you win the game. And if you look right down here, you have these 2 little diamond looking things. So whenever this character goes on a quest, which you would exert it, he would gain 2 lore. The goal is to get 20 lore for you, right? And your opponent is to get 20 lore for them. So you want to be able to quest characters. That's why I said that characters are kind of your bread and butter. Now, that doesn't mean you have to only have characters, because if you look at our location card here, where did it go? Here it is. If you look at our location card here, you can also see that it has a little diamond right here, which means that you gain 1 lore at the start of every one of your turns. So I would put my location card down like this. I'd put my character card. Let's say that it is part of this location. I would put it something like that, or you could overlap it something like that and say that it's on that location. And it doesn't have to be on the location to gain the lore, though. So at the start of my turn, I automatically gain this 1 lore. So I would put 1 lore counter over here. If I had my lore counters over here, for example, there's also an app actually that you can use for playing 2-player games, which is really cool. And you can just hit a little button and it kind of gives you the app or the lore. So then I would want to say, okay, well, that's 1 lore that I get at the start of my turn. I'm also going to quest Flynn Rider here. So we're going to go ahead and exert him and quest him, and that's going to give me 2 more lore. So I gained 3 lore on that 1 turn, and I have to get to 20 to win the game. That's the only way to win the game. Doesn't matter how many characters you take out of the opponent. Doesn't matter how many cards you actually play. The only thing that matters is getting that lore, but you want to prevent the other player from gaining lore. So you're going to want to do a lot of combat. You're going to want to take out their characters and their locations, which kind of brings me up to the next thing about locations is you can see here that characters have an attack value and a willpower, but on a location, you only have a willpower value. There is no attack value here, but you can see another number over here, which some people think that's their attack value. It's actually not. So on the location, they have move values. It does cost you 1 ink to move a character to this location. So if you had, let's say, your Cinderella that we had down here, and we had that 1 ink, we could then exert that to move our Flynn rider to that location. In this case, that wouldn't be really worth doing because you don't get any bonuses for this particular location for having a character there. So it's not really worth moving them there. But they do have a willpower, so you could have a character attack them. You could have as many characters as you want attack them. So let's say that the other player has this location and we have these two characters on our side, Cinderella and Peter Pan's Shadow. They do 2 damage and 2 damage each. So I could exert this one and attack this, and exert this one and attack this. That would remove the land from play. So once you remove it from play, they would not gain that lore on the start of their next turn. So that's how you remove lands, similar to how you would take out other characters, but a little bit different since you don't actually take damage back. So that's pretty much the quick overview of the game, like the how it's played, like I said. So hopefully that helps out, give you a little bit of an idea of the game. If it does, please like, subscribe, follow, ask me any questions you have about the game. I'm happy to help out. And maybe on the next video, we'll talk about creating a deck and then maybe go through a couple of turns to show you actually how to play the game. So yeah, that's going to be it for me for right now. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope I'll see you next time. Bye.